Hello, I'm Amanda Hocking, and I'm back with another episode of Writing on Wednesdays, where I give her writing tips and I talk about my life a little bit and give you some just advice about writing and life in general. It is a stormy day here in Minnesota where I live and where I'm recording this video, so if you hear some thunder, that's what's going on. It's been, we're all safe here and everything, but the thunder has been pretty loud on and off, so I think I'll be fine recording through it, but you might hear a little bit, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. I also wanted to give you a little update on my shop because I haven't talked about the shop yet that I've been planning to open and stuff. The reason we haven't gone, there's been like just a tiny little dumb hiccup with a thing that, whatever, just like a dumb little behind the scene things of taking a little bit to get together. But everything is going on track. We'll hopefully have the store open eventually. I'm hoping within probably the next month, but I'm kind of just being a little, that's what might be a little optimistic, I don't know. So just something to, yeah. But so I'm going to start out with selling, in case you don't remember, because it's been so long and we're still going, I'm going to start out with selling book plates, and then I'm going to add other book-related content and maybe autographed books and things like that. But just for now, it is still in process, and I've got some of the book plates and stuff ready to go. It's just getting the shop up and running fully, but hopefully soon. So this week I want to talk about something that I get asked about from time to time, and it's pretty common for all writers to experience at least one point or another, and that is how to overcome writer's block, or how to get unstuck in writing and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of like different advice that I can that I can give, but one of them, it really does depend on why you have writer's block. I've talked a little bit before about how I had writer's block with the fifth and final book in my Blood Proof series with writing it, because I had exposed I had just started publishing and I'd gotten a ton of very critical reviews, and I'd got them too much in my head, and it was a struggle for me to write and connect with the work. And so because of that, I've really had to get to like the core of that issue. And sometimes that's something to keep in mind too, is ask yourself, you have to figure out what the struggle is and why you're having troubles writing, and that can sometimes, that will oftentimes help you overcome it. Because like I said, like some general tips that I have for overcoming writer's block, I couldn't do because this was just such a psychological like block in my head for it. Other times, I think with writer's block or getting stuck, it's because I don't know where the story's going. Sometimes I'm just lost and I don't know what to do next. And one thing that really helps with me, if that's my issue, is to really kind of try and map stuff out. And sometimes you have to pull back and do like some general spitballing. And I've heard other writers talk about it too, but it's always notebook and paper really does help. I mean, I use my iPad, but it's the same basic principle where you're just scribbling and doodling and getting like the blood flowing in your brain about these things. And I always find that really helps me too, and kind of figure out where to go. I think having a loose outline it can be helpful too. If you find that you don't outline very much and you get stuck frequently, having a loose outline, just a general idea of where you want the story to go, can also be really helpful. I know in my last video I talked about how I'm kind of now a hybrid a little bit between plotting and pantsing, and other authors commented and said they were the same way. One thing I found to really help keep my flow going when I'm writing is to leave myself on cliffhangers a little bit. Because you know how like when you're writing, there's going to be some scenes that you're more excited to write about than others. Some stuff, you just, it connects the parts and it needs to be there for it all to make sense. But it's not every scene is as thrilling to write as other ones. It's usually like an exciting confrontation or a kiss or something like that, are the ones that I'm most excited about. But whatever it is that is really like exciting to you and why you're like so drawn to the story, it can be really tempting to like write those scenes and then like quit for the day. Just be like, oh, I got this great scene, and then just kind of end and leave. And I find it's actually best to quit right before that scene, and then the next day you make sure that you write past it and write through it to the stuff that might not be as exciting for you to write. Because then you're kind of keeping yourself going. You always leave yourself with, you've got something good to start tomorrow, something that you're excited about writing tomorrow. Don't leave yourself the problem. You have to kind of like be kind to your future self, and you have a problem, try to tackle it now. But sometimes it's also okay, just if you know it's a problem, just make sure that you label it as such. My first drafts, like I've talked about before, are just like so messy and so rough, and part of that is I leave myself stuff so I can go back and build it in. And I feel like I'm creating the bones. I'm creating the skeleton for my rough draft, and I just need to get everything in place there. And if I worry too much times about the meat, I can end up with a disproportionate body that I can put too much into certain areas and into a torso, and then forget to do anything on the legs. And it's important, I think, for me to keep going and just get the skeleton out, and then it's just so much easier to add the meat on later, and to do that in like revisions and rewrites and things like that. And I guess I really love revising and rewriting, so I think that maybe your mileage will vary there depending on how much you enjoy those things. I don't like proofreading because I'm not allowed to keep changing things, but I just have to read stuff that I've read a dozen times. But I do like, editing. I'm revising and changing and growing and stuff. I constantly love tinkering and tweaking little bits here and there. It's probably my favorite part about being a writer. But I saw Kirsten White said on Instagram the other day, and that's what got me thinking about it, too, was she said that leave yourself notes about where you want to go tomorrow. And I think that is very true. Like, I always used to treat, like, for a while, I was treating my rough draft like it was like this sacred thing, and like, so I didn't want to put anything into it that didn't matter. But now I have notes and stuff everywhere in there, and I'll write notes to myself, and I'll say, you got to do this tomorrow, and this is where it's going, and this is why, and just little notes, so then I can remember, and I can just jump in, and I don't have to try to go back to where my train of thought is. And I wish, like, I'm going to try and show you the rough draft for my most recent, the second book in the Seven Fallen Heart series, because I would love to show you, like, it's just, but it's so messy. It is so messy. The notes and stuff I have, it is a total mess. But a messy rough draft, I think, can still make a very beautiful finished draft. And I think that's something to remember, that it's okay. It's like, what's that saying? You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. I think that's true with so many things. I think that we can get so hung up on, not failing and not making mistakes. And I think that it's important to make mistakes and to fail and to try things. I was talking with a friend recently, and we're talking about how we kind of both grew up as gifted children, and so then we were labeled as such. And I've heard this kind of anecdotally from other people on the internet too, that stuff came easy to you when you were younger, and then when stuff came hard, like, you didn't know how to try or push through that all the time, and because you're like, well, if it's not, like, I'm just natural at everything, and then something doesn't feel natural, then you're like, well, then I shouldn't do that thing, and so there's a lot of things that I quit and didn't try harder at when I was younger, because I didn't, it was like, well, I'm not naturally good at that, I shouldn't do that, like, it's only stuff that comes easy and stuff. And I think that a lot of people obviously have a fear of failure, and I don't really have that fear as much as I used to. I'm more willing to try things. I think that because the realization is that failure is not going to kill me. It's not going to be the worst thing that's happened to me. It's not going to, it's really just, failure is not that bad. And it's also how you learn. It was one of the inventors, I don't remember which one, because an inventor said that you didn't, if you try if you're trying to invent something, and 100 times you don't do it, that's not 100 failures. You've learned 100 ways that this doesn't work. And that's sometimes the way it is too. And it can be tough sometimes, especially when you're writing and you've written something and you realize it doesn't work. That you wrote like all these words, put all this energy in, and it, for whatever, it just doesn't work. I've had to scrap whole novels before. I've just the other day I wrote a scene that was really good, except that I had screwed up the reactions. A character that should have been excited was aloof, and a character that should have been aloof was excited. Like, I don't know what I was thinking in my head. I just switched up the wrong thing. And so I had some of the bones there then still, but I had a lot that I had to redo and rework. And sometimes that can be frustrating because you've written it all and you're like, oh, this now just needs to, it's all blah. But it's something that I think, it's just part of the process. I don't really consider it like a failure or a mistake. I won't get to where I'm going to go unless I do this. And even like I've talked about too, I had a book called Honolulu that I was going to release. It was about witches, and I ended up scrapping it. There was just some things that didn't really work with it, and it just wasn't working. But I really liked parts of the story, so I cannibalized the parts of the story that I liked and the parts that did work, and I put part of those in the Water Song series. And so I think that's kind of also how stuff can work, but I couldn't have gotten to the Water Song series if I hadn't stumbled through Honolulu. And there's things that I would write differently in the Water Song series now, and I've talked about that before, but still, for the parts of it that are good and the parts of it that work, I only got to it through the mistakes and things that I made. And I think that's very important to remember, that when you're writing, that every word you write is a step towards finishing your book. Even, it doesn't matter if the word ends up getting cut, or if it's not the right word or anything like that. It's still part of your journey. You're not going to figure out what the right word is, and you're not going to be able to revise a clunky sentence if you don't get the clunky sentence out. You don't get to the end goal without kind of going through it. That's also been my big philosophy in life. Lately, it's kind of been a big change for me. I was very, I think, conflict avoidant and pain avoidant, and I am now getting to a point where I can face things and go through it, and part of it is because I realize that for so many things in life, the only way out is through. And so the only way to finish the book is by writing it. And so that's something that you just, and there's going to be parts that are difficult and frustrating, and there are definitely, or at least there are times for me where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Have I ever known what I'm doing? But this is part of the process. I mean, I think it is good to question yourself sometimes and to second guess things, especially in the editing and revising phase. I really think in your first rough draft, you just got to believe every idea you have is great. Let yourself go. Let your brain go. In the editing and revising, you cut, you take stuff out, but in the rough drafts, you really follow your bliss. I really think that should be the way it is. And you might realize that when you do that, you might be including problematic elements. And I'm not just talking about things that are, that like the story doesn't structurally work or anything like that. But you might have, like I have in the past, put things like body shaming is something that I've talked about a lot. And sometimes when you let that stuff go and you let your stories go, you might put something in there and you realize. But that's something that you do need to catch in revision, but if you're really looking at revisions critically, it can help you reflect and look at, different things. And as I talked about in previous videos too, I think the biggest thing is you always have to ask yourself why when it comes to revision. Why are you putting this in? Why does this need to be here? Why is this character this way? And really get to the answers for why you're doing it, because I think then you'll be writing a more aware book that is also more interesting and can stand up to scrutiny. But in terms of the rough draft, don't worry about that. Don't worry about answering any whys. You don't have to. Nothing has to hold up to scrutiny because you're telling yourself the story. It's also just keep that in mind too, because I think that sometimes that can be paralyzing for people. Because you keep thinking about how you want it to, it's got to be this perfect book, and you like this again. It's a fear of failure, a fear of you don't take a step because then you can't misstep, that kind of thing. And I think it's important that you realize that missteps are part of the journey when you're writing. You're going to make mistakes. You are going to misspell words. There's going to be rules that you know for a fact. You could ace every English test in the world, and you're going to make some dumb mistake with a comma or a semicolon or whatever in your book. Like it's going to happen, and that's okay, because that is how we get to something in the end that can be really good and really interesting. And there's also things that just characterizations that are flat and sentence that are wonky and run-on paragraphs and info dumps and all kinds of things like that you're going to have in your rough draft, and that's okay, because it also helps you figure out what the story is, and eventually you'll be able to figure it out. I mean, I definitely think there was a period in my younger years where I really did assume that books came out perfectly the way they were written. Like I knew that they were editors, but I thought they literally just corrected spelling and periods and that kind of thing. And so I knew like everyone could make a typo or misspell, but I thought otherwise. The writer, they wrote the book and it was like perfect from start to finish. But it was also like I used to think that they, film movies in chronological order, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, but that's usually not the case. They usually film the scenes that are easiest to film, and they've usually written the movie 100 times, and it has so many different hands on it. And that's it's true with books too. And it's all of my books. They're constantly changing and growing because they need to. That's how stories they grow. Otherwise, you're not telling a story. If it's not growing, or at least, once you get to the end of the story, like if it doesn't grow anymore, that's where the end is. But I think it's going to be a tricky thing, and I'm going to go into them today in this video. I am excited. I've been working on some stuff. I'm sharing some stuff on my TikTok, but I'm going to put it together in a future video where I'm recording myself like every step of the way, so you can see kind of what the process looks like in the parts that I can share with you. So I'm going to actually have like a complete little a tiny little like documentary about the actual process of making a book, and I'm pretty excited about that. I'm working on that, as I've been writing. It's slowed down my writing process a little bit, but that's kind of how it goes. I've also been thinking about adding on like a book review series in addition to this video that I'm doing. I'm trying to think of just, I don't know, something else that I wanna do. And I think that I've been kind of hesitant about it because I get super weird. I don't know if you know this about reviewing other people's books because I'm always afraid, like, I don't know, because the early part of my career people did not think a lot of my writing, and so I became, I think, overly sensitive, and I was afraid that if I talk about other books that the other books will do worse somehow. Like I don't know. I'm just, I'm a weirdo. But also, I don't always read like on a regular basis, because if I'm writing a lot, I'm not necessarily reading a lot. And I'm especially not reading books that are similar to mine when I'm writing it, because I don't want to be accidentally influenced. So I always have to wait, and like after I finish like a series, I get to binge all the books that were similar that I didn't get to read. And that's always fun. But then in between there can be like a big kind of famine. I'm tend to do a lot of things in a feast or famine kind of way. Like I'm either just reading a whole bunch or I'm not reading very much. But I think I want to get a little bit more steady. There's things that I can read that aren't too similar. There's even that I've got so many books that I should be reading and stuff anyway. So I think I'm going to add in that where I'll kind of talk about books in different videos in addition to my writing on Wednesday videos. But I would like it to be a weekly thing, but it might not be a weekly thing because again, like it's based on how often I'm able to read a book. And like sometimes I can read a lot and sometimes I'm not. So yeah, we'll I guess see how it's getting a little thunder here. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't know if you heard that earlier. It hasn't been too bad though. As usual, if you guys have any questions or anything you'd like me to talk about, please comment and let me know, because I would like to talk about it and things like that. I know I'm not super great about commenting on YouTube. I'm weird about YouTube. I'm weird about everything. But I'm trying to get better about replying to YouTube comments. But I'm also, I think, more responsive on like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I don't know why. And then I also have a TikTok too, if you want to check that out. Like I said, I'm sharing some stuff that I'm working on, and I also share mood boards there and stuff about my dogs all the time. So until next time, stay safe, be kind, and happy reading.